Hey, hello. If you're new here, my name is Rain. If you're not new here, welcome back. I appreciate you stopping on by to my little corner of the internet. So, before we get into anything, this is going to be a decorating my new sketchbook video. So, my last video was the sketchbook tour for sketchbook number 9, and it did things. We'll get to that, but for what we're doing today for this week's video, we are decorating sketchbook number 10. I did start this process before sketchbook number 9's tour. This took me about a week because there was so much drying involved. So it was a long process, this creation, and I wasn't even sure it was going to come out this week, but I promised in my last video that it would, so I had to push through. But this video took a little bit longer than originally anticipated because of the texture of the sketchbook, which I will also get to. But before, now that you know what you signed up for, I want to say thank you to everybody who's new here. So there's a lot of you. And I'm kind of nervous, to be honest, but my sketchbook tour popped off. I don't know what happened, honestly. I guess because it was a sketchbook tour, it really just attracted a more broader audience to my usual videos, maybe. But I definitely didn't post it expecting this to happen, so there are a lot of new people here. And I just want to formally say thank you so much for all of your kind words and for subscribing and for loving my work. I got so much community engagement, which is exactly why I moved over to YouTube from Instagram. I am still on Instagram, but the reason I knew I needed to make a YouTube channel was partially my love for long-form content as an artist, like watching long-form content, but equally so my desire to have a community and to have artists to engage with. I'm sure if you are an artist on Instagram, you know that having that kind of community feeling and that kind of support network of other artists just isn't really like there. You can find it if you really work for it, but people just aren't as ready and excited to comment and interact with each other and create that kind of friendly and mutual atmosphere that, I don't know, even when you're an art mutual, I just have a hard time really finding myself actually being like art mutuals and supporting each other. It's hard to do that on Instagram. And I don't know if it's the algorithm, I don't know if it's the way people tend to approach Instagram as a platform, I don't know what it is, but I came to YouTube for this. I came to YouTube for exactly what I got with my last video, which was people engaging with me and me being able to engage with them. And even if that engagement is me getting to say thank you and getting to just be appreciated and appreciate people back, that's something that I don't really get on Instagram with my account, and I came to YouTube for. And so this experience has been really lovely. If I miss any comments, I don't do it on purpose. Feel free to bump them. Like Gmail emails, just bump it by responding to your own comment and being like, hey, I don't always get notified on my phone. It's kind of not a fan of YouTube, to be honest. And some of the comments I found don't appear in my unresponded comment portion in the YouTube backend, so there's that. So I don't ever intend to ignore people, and I definitely don't have a big enough community where I can be like, it's like I don't have enough time. I do have enough time, I just don't always get notified. So if you had anything to say and you want me to respond, just bump it if I missed you. Seriously, I don't mind. I want to engage with you guys. It's something that's really important to me as a content creator here. So there's that. And then for those of you who are new and only watched the sketchbook tour or have never watched anything, the ugly phase is bad in this community, okay? My art has really bad ugly phases. The point of my work in the video where I say the ugly phase is bad, it's bad every time, but I always pull through. So when you see the ugly phase, I promise you it gets better. But it's gonna be there for a minute. And I also believe in showing my process as much as I record of it. I wish I recorded more of this process, because there was a point where my art looked like a pancake freshly put into a Skittle. So I wish I had gotten that. And I unfortunately didn't. It was bad. I will explain it a bit. I will explain the issues I had with this process to the best of my ability without as many visuals. But I wish I had recorded more, because this was very much a learning curve for me. Like a learning curve unlike any other I've had in my channel, and just having a sketchbook in general. So I wish I had gotten more of it. But there's going to be a brief moment of the ugly phase. I almost considered cutting it out because it doesn't make sense how it jumps, but authenticity. Y'all deserve to see the ugly face. So I will be drawing my original character Eris today. Eris, E-R-I-S, just because it kind of sounds like I say Iris from time to time. She gets here, she comes, they look like something for a minute there, but my OC Eris is my character for those who want to see more of her or them. They're they. You can look at my piece for Moth Bitten Library from Drawtober. She's in that one. And that's the only fully finished illustration I've ever done of Eris. I do have a lot of sketches of her. I did mention her in my last video. She does appear in my sketchbook a lot. I don't do a lot of finished work of her though. So my OC Eris is here. She has problems. Okay, she has problems. I very deliberately named this character after the Greek goddess of discord, chaos, just because she is chaos. Eris is chaos. So I should have known everything was going to go wrong when choosing to draw this character. Something always does for me when Eris is involved, kind of like everything in her life. But this sketchbook has a very smooth and non-absorbent cover. That sounds odd. The ELO sketchbook, which was sketchbook number 9, while a hardcover sketchbook, it has a soft, foamy texture to it, which is kind of absorptive. It takes the material and it lets it kind of settle in a little bit more. If I run my fingers over my sketchbook number 9 sketch, which I did in just plain white Signo Gel Pen with, I believe, a gold Signo Gel Pen to accent, it's not settling on top. It did kind of go into the cover eventually. This one has no absorption whatsoever. And so this process ended up a lot longer than anticipated because I had to wait for things to dry that aren't meant to have to go through that process. It's a very fickle illustration before I gessoed it. And that also had an issue that we'll get into. So everything at this point can be wiped off with like a slightly damp cloth, and you won't know. You would not know anything was ever there. It's hanging on by a thread. So when it came to actually layering colors and stuff, I was trying to work on top of a silver Signo base for the sketch because I don't have the ability artistically to so I needed my sketch to actually be able to pull off any sort of decent looking work at all. However, I learned really quickly in actually applying Posca to the cover when I do that it just bleeds everywhere. So the Signo and the Poscas don't get along. They very much are trying to bleed into each other, live with each other. They are not good friends. and that was my first problem. So I wasn't able to finish my first Posca layer as I originally intended because I needed to let the Signo dry. The Signo drying took forever, and that's to be expected. It's not something that's supposed to sit on top of paper. It's a pen, it's a white gel pen. It's used to interacting with a textured medium probably, or being put on the paper. You know, you're putting it on watercolor drawing for a little white highlight and it just kind of settles in with the water and the paper, or you're putting it on paint and it's a little bit, you're not doing a full sketch with it. So it was a mistake. It was definitely a mistake. I don't really know exactly what would have been better to use on it because pencil ended up, I tested later, on the back. Pencil does not appear with the sketchbook cover. It's just not, at least not well. Not in any way where I could have been able to see it. And I guess I could have painted it. I guess I could have painted the sketch with a Posca. The white Posca doesn't work on this cover, but maybe a gray one, if I had, or one of the super fine tip ones, probably could have been good. But when I did try to move away from the hair into an area with a lot more open space, I found that trying to lay down a lot of Posca next to each other on this cover, one, bled into the ear, Eris's ear, the purple and blue started mixing, but also when it wasn't fully covered where I wanted it to be, it wasn't like a nice flat even tone, it just pushed itself around. So I did take advantage of the fact that these Poscas were working like a watercolor, kind of. It was very much melting into each other because there's nothing, it's just sitting on top of this sketchbook. There's nothing it's drying into. So I did take advantage of it. I did get some cool gradients. They didn't last, obviously, because that's not the style I'm going for. That's not my style in general, to be honest. But I did end up really, really liking that kind of way, the way it kind of just blended together. It was very, very nice. However, not what I was going for, and I don't recommend the experience I had to anybody in terms of wanting to do this. I would recommend probably using a paintbrush and a thicker sort of paint. Posca pens have a lot of fluidity to them. They obviously need to flow through the barrel of the pen, not get clunked up or anything like that. So I wouldn't suggest this. If you're going to paint on this sketchbook brand specifically, I can't speak for other ones, I'd recommend just not. I would recommend going through the process of painting with an actual brush, which is not something I can do well at all. So after 10 decades of drying, I ended up layering very, very, very slowly. So throughout 2 days of classes and stuff like that, I would just do little bits here and there throughout my class. I always doodle while I'm working with my job, so I would just get out a Posca pen or two and I would add little hatches here and there, little things where I'm still paying attention and doing my job but making minuscule progress. Most of that was the building up of the skin. The skin took ultimately for the beige Posca on this cover about 5 layers to be opaque enough that I was happy with it, and so that when I added other textures and things of that nature, it would just make up for itself. It would be more of a dimension thing and not a I'm seeing the cover through the paint kind of issue. Everything else, because it was a darker color, I think, it did end up being only 2 to 3 layers. The base gray that I used for the shirt under the vest was substantially better. That laid down the best of any other color throughout the entire process. It laid down almost first try very well, and I was very happy with that one. It did make the process a little bit easier because I was able to wait for that to dry and then work on that for a lot of the process while waiting for other bits and bobs to dry. However, the ears are still blending into the vest too much. I don't even know if in the final product I'm actually happy with how different it is. I don't know if I distinguish them quite as well, but I did get to a point with the piece where I had so many accidents that I decided that I ultimately just need to leave it and stop messing with it, because it just was not going super, super well overall. And I just wasn't sure that I could handle any more frustrations with the actual process. While I am happy in retrospect, this was actually a very stressful project, because I wanted it to look good. I knew it could look good. I knew I had the technical skills to make it look passable as a illustration on a sketchbook cover. I knew I had what I needed to be able to kind of execute it, you know what I mean? I knew I could do it, and it just wasn't working. And definitely one of those situations where you're maybe a newer artist and you have this vision in your head, but you don't have the technical skills to create it. It was kind of like that, but I knew I could, and I just couldn't figure out where it was going wrong necessarily. At later points, I did figure out some of my overall long-standing mistakes and things that you should not do in this situation. This was overall, there were things that weren't indicative or accommodating of my style, I guess you could say. And that did end up causing a lot of issues. But for the most part, just taking my time, layering up the little colors here and there, hatches and circles and things that draw your attention shape-wise is a very crucial component of my kind of more hyper poppy style. I want it to be fun and carefree, and I want you to be looking at it, and I want you to see these little colors here and there and be like, oh, I see that on the complete opposite side, but it's not consistent. There's little touches of this color here and there, but it's not even that color. So overall, I did have the luxury of having enough carefree nature in this piece that the mistakes don't really matter as mistakes. They look appropriate for the drawing that I was working with. Though there are a few things that I ended up wishing I could have fixed, but I don't want to touch it anymore. And that is most notable here of all points in the drawing, and it's the fact that the right side of the face, well, our right, her left eyebrow is just way too covered with the hair, and it just blends way too much. If I could have figured that out and actually acknowledged it when I was still in the sketching phase and not quite at this point in the drawing, I would have fixed it, because it definitely was not how I wanted it to look. And it just is a little bit it just doesn't feel quite right. It makes it feel a little bit asymmetrical, which is not what I was going for, but it's not a big deal. It's just an eyebrow. Other than that, there are issues in the actual kind of maintaining of Eris's character and her appearance as my OC. Eris does have light hair. It's not light here. So, yeah. And the red streak, it didn't come through really. I did try and add it, but it didn't end up working quite how I intended it to. And then these pens that I added, they're not gesso proof. I learned that the hard way. You're going to see me when I have a crisis over it, but I'm telling you now. There's no foreshadowing. I'm telling you now, these things smeared like crazy when I gessoed the piece. And it was a pain to fix. Because I used these pens specifically in hopes of being able to chunk out some finer details that the Posca nibs were just a little bit too thick for. This is a small piece. I am a small person, and my hand is not that much bigger than the piece. So, small person, my hands aren't that big. This is a 5.5 by 8.5 sketchbook. You know, this isn't big, right? So, the Posca tips and the finer details that are kind of indicative of my art just weren't showing up, and they were just a little bit too clunky for me. So in an effort to make it feel a little bit more like my work and maintaining consistency with my style, I was going in and I was hatching very lightly. I was adding little bits here and there, especially the eye bags that are just a part of all of my character designs. All of my characters need better sleep and probably better mattresses, I'm going to be honest. And so those hatchings, and if you can hear my cats just losing their mind, I am so sorry. I try to edit them out and it never works. But yeah, the cats are gonna cat and I'm sorry. So anyway, the hatching, especially under the eye, the deep eye bags that I tend to do, the hatching, I wanted it to create more dimension to the hair and where it distinguishes from the face, things like that. And long story short, all of that ended up being a huge mistake because gesso-wise, it ended up being just a major problem and evaporating. So, yeah, that was wild. These pens are completely non-compatible. I believe these are the Keiko pens. And when I say non-compatible, I mean I'm doing this now. You can see the sun is there. It's being a sun. I gessoed this at night. So long after I finished working on it. I ultimately did cut out a fair portion of the video where I was working on the hatching because it doesn't last. So I instead just kind of cut it out for the most part and moved on to the point where I was working in white gel pen. White gel pen's a huge thing in my art, honestly. I'm white gel penning everything to the atmosphere, really. I am very dependent on white gel pen for really capturing the essence that is my style in a lot of my traditional work. It just, a piece isn't done until I've gone crazy with a white gel pen, needless to say. And so I was at a point here in Sketchbook 10's cover where I really felt like I was coming to a close. I felt very satisfied with it. I had defined it more, and frankly, I felt like this was all that I had left for it. And I don't know, I was proud of the piece at this point in the creative process, and I was looking forward to being able to say it was done and it was complete. So I paused my voiceover to deal with the dog, and now it sounds like somebody's running a generator outside my house, even though that shouldn't be physically possible with where I live and how my property is formatted. So we're just gonna have to deal with background noise because so much drying, I just am a little bit late in my recording schedule, and I have work all day tomorrow, and my internet takes a while to upload. So my next step in this entire process is acknowledging the fact that I have never used Mod Podge before, which is what I'm using as a gesso. And in me being terrified of just never using this before, but wanting to try and cement the work, I decided that the best solution for this would be to go and basically just Posca little hearts on the back that I could use as an experimentation gesso, basically. I just was going to put them down, let them dry for an hour or so, and then Mod Podge them and basically see how they turn out. Would they smear? How would they react? I probably could have just looked up how do Posca pens react with gesso or with Mod Podge, but I am a person of experience, and I just knew that this was going to benefit me more if I just did it myself and saw it directly. And also I just didn't feel like watching a video that was specifically just a review of Mod Podge and Posca pens. It just felt easier to do it myself. So that's got me a cute little rainbow heart thingy on the background. Not in order, of course, but I'm really happy with it as a cute detail, and I kind of want to add it to my next sketchbook too. They're very cute. I ended up carrying my little heart craze from the back onto the cover. I wanted to do teal because it matched the predominant non-skin color that was in the drawing the most. And so I went around and I added little teal hearts all over the place with Eris's character. Even though she is chaos incarnate, she is a very fun and carefree and loving individual. Kind of a attracts bad things to her, but is super like optimistic about it, I guess would be the best way to put it in terms of like Eris's actual like personality traits of the character. She very much looks on the bright side, which I mostly did because a lot of the unfortunate things are very upsetting, and she has a rough life, guys, okay? So she deserves something, and that something is a good personality, a good, happy outlook on life despite hardships. And so the hearts felt very indicative of her character. So yeah, I added them and they made me happy. And you know what? That's what sketchbooks are for. It's for making you happy. And so basically I doubled up on the title of the sketchbook, the like white gel pen overall. I beefed it up, I made it look really good, and in the time I had everything drying, I added a lot more hearts. So Podge was, this is the first time for me, guys. I've never used Podge before. I don't know what I'm doing. And, well, I mean, I did the heart test, and it went great, and I had no issues with it. So I thought things were going to go better than they did. I did not expect things to start smearing like instantly. I found that the Signo Silver Gel Pen very much did not hold up against the Mod Podge, and so I was very much kind of like, I don't know what to do. And I was kind of worried. And so I was winging it, and like I'm anxious watching the video so I can film my voiceover because I remember the experience of just not knowing what I was doing. And so you kind of just see me go from like brushing it on to like short and harsh dabs because I'm scared of things smearing and I really want them to stay intact. And I'm like, I just want to preserve them without actually like ruining them. And I had a lot of faith because of how well it dried on the back that even though it was very thick with how I laid it on, that it would ultimately look okay and dry okay. That unfortunately actually was not the case for a few areas. There were a few areas where it like just didn't dry quite right, and I left it overnight and I waited into the day. And one of those areas was the title where I dabbed it. And I still can't tell. I fixed it, and I'll go into that in a minute. I can't tell if it's because the Signo White Gel Pen reacted really bad with the Mod Podge and smeared, and that's why it looked like it never dried, or if ultimately it just actually did not dry at all properly and stayed very smeared. But yeah. This was a experience that I don't recommend to anybody. This was a very nerve-wracking experience. The only thing that actually turned out okay with the entire Mod Podge, despite the Keiko pen smearing, was the drawing. At least the smears, as bad as they were, looked okay. So ultimately it could have been worse. But I ended up, and you'll see in the next clip, which I haven't recorded yet, but you'll see, I actually erased with a damp cloth the entirety of everything around the character, redrew the hearts, and then just didn't re-Mod Podge. So the sketchbook title is going to end up fading with time. I'm not too upset about it fading with time. I don't have the ability to record voiceovers in my voiceovers. This is a live recording. I don't have the ability to record like this at my desk space until the holidays are over. I have family visiting. And when I say the holidays, I mean Christmas. I'm aware that is still November. They're staying for 2 months. So we're gonna have to deal with a bedroom shot. So, and it does allow you to see the Mod Podge. You can see right there. That's where the Mod Podge ends. I mentioned erasing it. I did. I erased everything. If you were to put them side by side, which I don't have pictures, but if you were to put them side by side, the hearts are all in different orders. They are, I believe, different colors. And only the character stayed Mod Podge, and she glares real intense. Wow. Yeah, maybe the sticker stayed a little Mod Podge. I did do that on accident, but I just wasn't happy with it, and this looks a lot better. I do think I liked it with only a few hearts, but because it was Mod Podged, you could kind of see, and it was a real workout to like resolve that issue. I did line the rest of it with hearts because it was uneven, as you could see, based on the amount. And I don't know, I wanted to fill the spine. I thought it'd be cute. But you can see, when I'm talking about it, like running, you can see right in there where the blue started to fade. This is kind of muddy. It's pretty bad in the nose. That's where most of that hatching was. And I was able to semi-resolve the issue. I did put these white hatches to try and cover up some of the mess. And ultimately, I think it looks really good. I'm really happy with this as a painted sketchbook cover. I mean, I don't expect my sketchbook covers to last. I Mod Podged it in hopes that it would last several years after I finish using it and like facing the wear and tear. As far as this, it's the 28th right now, but I started painting the cover on the 20th. So before I even actually like finished my last sketchbook, I started working on this. I have my goals as per usual. I have a little welcome note. I like to start my spreads in my sketchbook kind of chaotic. You know, you hear artists talking about, and a lot of artists experience that kind of blank page block and that kind of like anxiety of the first page. I make my first page a swatch page. Even if I've used the Sketchbook brand before, maybe their paper formula changed. I don't know. I'm just going to swatch. And it's good I did, because I mentioned earlier I was going to mention a complaint. Wow, that's a sentence. Oh yeah, that's the brand. I can't pronounce that. I'm so sorry. But you can see that this does really bad with alcohol marker, which is one of my primary mediums. It has really bad feathering, which I noted in words. I can't point my camera and use my hand at the same time, apparently. But yeah, it has really bad feathering, so I am really interested in how I'm going to approach this sketchbook. But pen doodles, stickers, my Instagram at that attempt at the Instagram symbol, just fun stuff. I feel like if I start my sketchbooks chaotically, I don't worry about the actual aesthetic of the sketchbook, and I let it be an authentic place for me. And I was asked to draw black cats, and so I also found that that was a really, really awesome way of like getting into the groove of the new sketchbook. And so I think I would recommend like having your friends, your family, give you an idea on what to sketch if you're kind of worried about the first page, because this was very carefree and fun. And of course I'm going to add more, but I feel like that kind of just eradicated like my anxieties. Like, this was a great start to a sketchbook. This was an amazing experience, and it's all thanks to the people who have joined my community. The cats are still having fun, I'm sorry. So, I don't know. I kind of want to have my brother request something and have that be the first page, but it would probably be an intense Dark Souls character, and I'd get intimidated. So, this was a very long-winded and chaotic video. I don't know what any of you expected on my channel other than chaos, though, to be fair. Maybe Eris should actually be my self-insert OC. But ultimately, I really appreciate everybody who... I'm flashbanging you. Oops. I really appreciate every one of you who sat through the entirety of this video. It really means a lot to me. And this feels so weird to say after my last video popped off, but here, we'll have Will in my sketchbook for my closing shot. So, ultimately, like if you like, dislike if you dislike. I always appreciate comments, like, shares, subscribe if you want to, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, night, wherever you are, and I hope you stick around to see my next video, whatever that'll be. Probably filling this page. Probably filling that, but we'll see. Who knows? You have to stick around because I'm chaotic, and that's just how it's gonna go. So, bye-bye!